Hey everyone, I'm glad y'all are able to join us tonight. Um, Got a show that received a lot of requests to talk about, especially this last week, um, of the murder sheets and all their breaking news when it's regarding the Klines and Delphi and about what type of narrative is being driven and who's driving the narrative, which is extremely interesting. As I looked at some of the and listened to their most recent podcast, found some interesting things in there, and most certainly was able to see um, what a true animal Kegan Kline is, and that he's still up to his old ways, and he is an individual that is exactly where he needs to be. But anyway, with that being said, oh, thank you for your support and everything, Single Mama 4. It means a lot to us. And we'll be discussing some things at the end of the show about our members and everything. And glad to have you on board. Um, but as we'll go ahead and get started on the show here. All right. As always, a little brief introduction. I'm Steve. This is Mrs. Steve. I'm retired law enforcement. Spent 20 years doing a job and worked everything from the jail, road patrol, up to investigations. Had a lot of different training in those 20 years, um, from the SWAT team, being the entry team leader, to a counter sniper. Also was trained and became a state certified crime scene tech, which immensely helped my abilities to investigate crimes. But I've worked all different types of crimes, from burglaries up to homicides, and had 20 good years at it, and retired and decided to become a ambassador to the web sleuth world and try to get information out there that will benefit not only law enforcement, but also all the people out there that want to have an impact on cases. Well, that being said, once again, Murder Sheet's focus and mine, and a lot of people's focus out there due to the Anthony Shots account, is Kegan Kline. As you can see, that this is an individual that lives quite a ways from Delphi, 36 miles. He lives in Peru, and was arrested for child exploitation. And warrants have been searched on, issued, and executed at his residence in Peru. He had to turn over all his electronic devices, and which at a point during that he, deleted some apps on his phones and stuff, and he is a very interesting individual for the fact that he's one of two people that created a false alibi. And he's had polygraphs, and he was arrested in 2000. And of course, we have the one of the many interviews I'm sure law enforcement had with him that was released by Murder Sheets. And that relationship of Murder Sheets and Kegan Kline is extraordinary, to say the least. There's people out there speculating, are they just another arm of law enforcement and being used by law enforcement to drive a certain narrative? How are they getting some of this information? Of course, they say they just obtained information from the get-go on the first transcript, but they're very consistent in keeping this narrative at the forefront, which is interesting, and which it also serves the case well. It does keep a case that should be on the front page until we take the animal off the street, this psychopath that killed these two little children. And, Libby and Abby did not deserve, no matter what went on, no matter if they catfished or whatever happened or what they discovered or anything about their lives, or any victim out there doesn't deserve to be killed by any type of predator. And we have to focus on those things. So I have to give kudos to the Murder Sheets, because they have that at times that the case lost some focus. They most certainly have lit a fire, and in the YouTube and the social media platforms out there, so that we can all come together, and look at this and try to come up with an answer. And in that process, if this offender, we can keep him to ground so that maybe he won't repeat. And hopefully that has played a part of all the YouTubers out there, that they played a part and was able to keep this killer to ground so that he wasn't able to do the work and evil that he has committed in this case. And so we all have to, work together and make sure that we have a common interest and have a good impact on the case, not fight among ourselves, but let's focus on what is truly evil. And that is people like Kline here and most certainly Bridge Guy. This here is the Anthony Shots account, and this is the creator of it, which is Kegan Kline. And he had a lot of different accounts and all different platforms. And the things that were revealed in those transcripts is, pretty condemning of those conversations and the searches. Art Fox, thank you. That means a lot. Like I said, all y'all support in so many different ways helps us do what we want to do with our other as we progress on with our journey through this YouTube stuff and go out and help our victims. But thank you. That's very nice of you and kind of all our members. But Anthony Schott says he this account in this Dropbox, and multiple users may have had access to it, but also there was multiple users, if you look through the transcripts of the Anthony Shots, that law enforcement was focusing on, and they most certainly looked at Kegan and asked him, who are you protecting and why are you protecting? Not so much as who you are protecting, but why are you protecting him? Because they have certain information that we are not privy to, although it's been that we know there's a North Country Club road link, and searches were made from there, contacts were made with Libya and Abby, search of a service station that was just over a mile from their murder site was made from Peru and from this address. And so you have to look at it, and when you start layering everything, that mountain of evidence gets bigger and bigger as far as Mr. Kline's here involvement in facilitating the murders of two little girls. And so we have to look at all that information, and the murder sheets most certainly have focused that on Mr. Kline. We got two individuals, well-educated. One of them's a journalist, one of them's a lawyer, and they have come out with these Delphi podcasts. Originally, it was about restaurant murders and things, but they focused one arm of their research and a lot of their podcasts on the Delphi murders, which is what we most certainly want, because the more people we can contact, the better we are off of it. But they focus on Kegan Kline, and they have an unknown source and have made contact. And when you listen to the latest podcast, there's mentioning of that they had made contact with him, and he told them that he didn't want to have any further contact with them, and so they shut off. But within a few days, a couple of days, as the podcast says, that they were notified that Kegan was wanting them contact back, and we'll go over that a little bit more because that's very interesting, because that's possibly revealing a couple of three different ways that this is going to work out of who that contact is. But they also said they sent a letter. They tried to set up an interview attempt, and of course they revealed the transcripts, and they revealed the marathon search, which when we became aware of the marathon gas station search, it, that's another nail in the coffin for what's going on here. That, the odds of this continued contact in the city of and catfishing these two little girls that live in a certain city, searching a service station in that certain city, contacting them that day, most certainly is a mountain of evidence of probable cause. So without a doubt, I can see why murder sheets would focus on the clients. And now they've come out and are talking about Kline being released to the Indiana State Police, and they've advised, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There was an article, and we have that article here, that the river search is connected. And so they've been pretty good and batting pretty high average on the information they've provided about the Klines, and revealing some good information, and how we should, and what weight we should put on these individuals of, what is their trustworthiness of this journalist and this lawyer, and how are they interacting, and what is their link with law enforcement. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But one of their, if you listen to the podcast, you'll see that Kegan says there, I'm sitting in here hungry. And he talks about that he's the victim of that. His attorney, and he's a victim of being taken advantage of. There's no one in the world that deserves to be taken advantage more of than this individual out here. Barbara McDonald tricked him out of $500 for an interview, and he says that he's not going to talk unless Murder Sheets gives him $400. And they get in a little back and forth through their communications about that. Murder Sheets says we don't pay for sources, and of course, and he says true journalists don't pay for their sources, and Kegan fires back that TMZ has offered money, and so it's just a back and forth. And Kegan most certainly says, just think about, to the Murder Sheets, that what would 1 hour get you? So he's looking at the Murder Sheets as if they're making a lot of money off of him. What monies they're making, or what the future of what information they have, what the narrative is, and what they will release in the future if this case is solved, most certainly is something that that we should look at, and what will be the final product of the Murder Sheets. But for right now, I take them for what they're worth. They're trying to keep everybody enlightened of what exactly is going on. So I'll stick with that for now. But he says that people are profiting off of him, and he said that his lawyer has not, advised him not to answer any questions. Which instantly he'll go and talk to Murder Sheets. Says, you can have my information. I'll answer all your questions if you'll send $300 to inmate sales and $100 to commissary. I've been in law enforcement a long time, and I remember in our jail that we had, even before they had commissary. When I first started my career, the jail facility we had didn't have any commissary. That was something that came along much later. Now the prisons had them, but the jail systems and some of the correctional institutes or smaller counties most certainly didn't have them. And I'd never heard of inmate cells. That's something that's come along with this new stuff on this computer and Google machine, as she likes to say, of stuff that's come along after I've left. But the ironic part of him wanting to sell this information is that, he sees and stated that people are profiting off of him. Well, this animal, his double standard is that he doesn't look at that the Anthony Schatz account that he created and catfished these girls for these, not only Libby and Abby, but all these other girls that he said he never spoke to the first female that he didn't ask for nude pictures. And, he's a sexual predator, and he profited from those accounts. And he most certainly didn't enrich the lives of those children. He did right the opposite. He most certainly exposed them to dangers. And ultimately, I believe it led to the deaths of at least 2 young girls. And so I have no mercy on him. If anyone took $500 from him or refuses to pay him, and he can't go to the commissaries and buy him some Oreos, I have no use for him. I don't care. But we'll be talking about a lot of this stuff. But I looked up inmate cells, and like I said, it was something got kicked off there. But anyway, inmate cells, it broke it up into two words. But if you look it up, inmate cells is one word. Well, all right. Thank you. Once again, we thank you for your support. Thank you guys for all your hard work in the Murder Sheets podcast. Kegan Kline tries to manipulate journalists for money. He does some really gross things. Can the DA use that against him? Absolutely. And we're going to be covering a lot of that, for the fact that you're going to see that I have a couple of slides that address that exact issue of that. No matter what environment he's in, he's still a sexual predator. You can look at his chirps, you can look at this video, and from some of the things that inmate cells allows him to do, because it says the inmate's mobile app allows you to manage your inmate cells account, make deposits for products at certain facilities. You also can schedule video sessions and send emails to these individuals where they are allowed at a facility. And not all facilities support products and services that we offer. Back in the day, we didn't have phones in every cell. Then as new facilities and correctional institutes were built, they put phones in. And now we've come up with this new generation of inmates that when they are housed, some facilities offer almost all the conveniences of home. You get your TVs, you get your air conditioning. And I believe that most part that's deserving of, until you're found guilty and of crimes, then you most certainly should not lose, as you may lose your freedom to interact because you're a threat to society. But still, you should have some benefits of what's going on in the world, because occasionally it does happen that innocent people are arrested for charges they're not guilty of. And so they should have certain things. But there's certain classifications in certain situations. And if you're a repeat offender or things, you're on probation and stuff, that may not be the best route to go. There's so many different theories about how to rehab and what goes on in our jail and prison facilities. That's for another show. But tonight with this guy here and what he's facing and stuff, the information and what he's shared with other people and what he requests from people that use this app, that give him money for the commissary or give him money so he can have videos or whatever, so he can talk and speak to these women and encourage them in certain directions, most certainly can be used against him in court and will be. And some of the stuff I really can't go into too much before the fact that I just like to see stuff pile up against the boy. It brings certain satisfaction to me and Mrs. Steve. But the sexting, chirping, videos, the communications, all these things, the numerous interactions that he has currently are between Kline and adult women. And if you listen to the Murder Sheets podcast, I didn't put it in here because most certainly I try to keep this as family oriented as we can, in case there are children in the room or passing by, or you're having to take care of your children, that there's certain things that we try to keep as clean as we can. And but lewd and obscene sexual requests that this individual has made, and he still has those fantasies that drive his everyday activities. And we know that he's in a jail. He's facing possibility of the next several decades of his life being gone. And most certainly with his health, the way he is and the way he behaves, he won't survive that. But there is also a strategy that we'll discuss about some of his weight gain, of what that might mean. But all of this stuff, anything and everything as he goes about his daily lives, his chirping and stuff, is done in a controlled environment the jailers and everybody, they keep track of all this information. And there's a lot of recordings and things, and which he'll learn of as he sits there at the defense table and he gets to watch some of this stuff. And then he gets, that I'm a changed man. I don't think a changed man has as many numerous interactions where he's talking about what he wants women to do. But we have to realize that incarceration does not stop addictions. When we arrest people for whatever, if it's a drug charge, their sexual fantasies, whatever the habits or whatever the violations are, that person doesn't magically change and become a law-abiding citizen just when that steel door slams shut behind them. They're still the same psychopath, sociopath, narcissistic person that they were on the street, and still very dangerous. And they still have to maintain, and it's something that is inherent in their DNA of just how they act. Because as I put in here, specifically for this individual, that sexual predators do what sexual predators do, regardless of their environment. If he was on the street, he'd still be doing it. If he's in Peru, do the same thing. He's in jail in Miami County, and he's still doing it, even in a controlled environment. He can't change. This is what is within the soul of this individual, and he'll have to live with that for the rest of his days. And I'll never be able to repeat that enough of what he is, and how he should be viewed by society, because he's a danger to every child out there. And that if he had a phone, he would exploit your children in a heartbeat, and not think anything of it. But his appearance has changed drastically from the time of his arrest, and most certainly from the time of the murder of Olivia and Abby. He's gained a lot of weight, although he's always been a big fellow. And in my opinion, he's far bigger than what Bridge Guy would be. But, I don't know the format of that phone. We don't know what the settings were. We don't know the manipulation of what happened with the thing. So we have to be very careful when you just say straight up, not him. Don't know yet, until law enforcement probably has a better understanding of and corrections of how that camera, cell phone camera, recorded that video and what were the settings and than we have. But often, as in my career, whenever we were prepping, we was trying to get pictures of people we were going to put in a lineup that were guilty. They do everything in the world to change their appearance, from putting their, wetting their hair, slicking it down to the skull, to shaving their heads. And if you give them enough time, even for weight gain, that sometimes by the time they went to court, maybe a couple of years, and they try to do this so they can separate themselves, that if there's anything that is similar to them, especially if you have an eyewitness, that they will most certainly try to change their appearance the best they can. Is that what he's doing with all this weight gain? Don't know. But most certainly law enforcement and the attorneys and everything will consider that situation, and is that true and that what's happening? I don't know, but it's something that they will consider as it gets closer to court day. But here we see they have a crash team that's recently, when they're searching this Wabash River in Peru, which is just 2 or 3 miles from Kegan's home. And there's been a lot of debate this week about, is this related to the release to the custody of Indiana State Police of Mr. Kline, or no, I ain't going to say Mr. Kline, Kegan Kline, that while he was in their custody, what did they do? Where did they interview him? What information was there? Was there a reason that they took him out of the jail and out of those facilities to do an interview, because maybe Indiana State Police isn't completely clear who the leak may be to murder sheets. Because, like I said, there's certain information within murder sheets that we'll cover that says that they referred to that, well, we made an attempt to talk to him. He told us no. Then a day or two later, we're advised that he's ready to talk to us. Well, within a day or two, who has access to him? You can't say it's an attorney that's representing him. They're officers of the court. And what would be their narrative, and what would be the reasoning that they would say, okay, talk to him? And so there's indicators that that's not the case. Then you have to think about, well, who would be and have access to him that, is Kegan driving it saying, okay, contact him? If he is, then he's just using murder sheets. And that is not the feeling I get from when I look at all the information that's been released by it. Now, if that was the case that Kegan told somebody, hey, text them, tell them to contact me, then he would be a part of the narrative and driving this focus. And I don't have that feeling. But is it possible that someone is communicating with him and Kegan told him something? Is it possible it's someone that wants to drive the narrative and says, let me contact murder sheets and give them a little white lie, and maybe they'll contact him and it'll generate some focus and new information? Don't know. But when you listen to the podcast, you'll see that when they asked him the question, it was just like it was 2 days before. He was hateful, 180 degrees, didn't want to talk to him, almost like he was unknowing that they were going to call. And so that's very suspicious about who would be trying to drive and to have these interviews occur, and for what purpose and reason. And is it something that murder sheets is it just something they're creating? Don't know. But I do find it extremely interesting that when I look at this and listen to them speak, that sometimes you can hear when the attorney when he's talking and everything, there's certain inflections of anger and stuff in his voice when he's taking the side of what, as Kegan spoke to him. Was that the same voice that he spoke to him in? Or, don't know. But I would find it extremely interesting because if it's the chirping and stuff and it's just messaging, it may not be that, if we're just text messaging back, you won't be able to do those inflections of anger. But I did find that interesting and entertaining when I was listening to him of how they represented the anger or the inflection of how he felt towards murder sheets, which I can understand that he would be angered with murder sheets for bringing all this focus on him. So I understand their side of it. But in this article here, you can absolutely see the WISH staff reports out of Peru, Indiana, that they were searching the Wabash River in Peru. And they say it may be connected to the Anthony shots. And then, of course, they say that they're related to the Murder Sheet podcast, that the Murder Sheets podcast is a news gathering partner. So there's certain partnerships going on here between this news article and the News 8 partnerships and the murder sheets. And they, of course, everything they do is connected to Kegan Kline now when we're talking about the Delphi. And then in the last sentence of here of this article, which is abbreviated, I just took the first 4 sections, and it says the murder sheet reports it was for a search of the river. And they most certainly say that he was released, no ifs, ands, or buts, so that he could, in some shape, form, or fashion, direct the Indiana State Police for a search of the river, and which is extremely interesting. because if Kegan Kline stepped up this close to his court date through whatever negotiations they have reached and has decided that this is some way I can lessen my sentencing, and I'll cooperate and take whatever my due is coming to me for whatever I did and what I know about the murder of 2 children. And this is where the evidence is. But is that the case? Don't know. Murder sheet says it. That's how come he was released, is for the search of the river. How much of this information is connected to Delphi? Don't know. But we have to weigh in that Anthony Schatz contacted those 2, made contact with the Libyan Abbey at 8 o'clock that morning, did a search of the service station within a mile, 1.36 miles of their murder site. The Anthony Schatz, catfished them. There was a Wi-Fi connection on North Country Road during that. Kegan Kline repeatedly says that, well, you know where I was at. You know where my phones are. And he created an alibi being in Vegas. And so when you focus all of this and you look at the murder sheets, it makes you think, what else do they have? And how far will this narrative go? Because they say they are confident this case will end in a favorable way. Thank you, Sweet Sue. We appreciate all the support, and anything y'all can do for us most certainly allows us to do things in the future as we move along with our platform. Thank you. But and all this information, when you look at it and gather it and stack it up, and they say it's going to end favorably, it does give some support that Carter says that he anticipates this thing would be finished by the time he retires. I wasn't feeling that good about it a month ago or even 3 weeks ago, but in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I'm feeling a lot better about this case. And I'm hoping that all of y'all out there will take some comfort in that. Hopefully that this is, and hopefully he's going to do, not that he can ever do and right what has happened, but he most certainly can assist and get this other animal off the street, this psychopath of a bridge guy and whatever individuals are involved in the murder of Libyan Abbey. And but if you have any information regarding the murder of Libyan Abbey, most certainly call, text, whatever, get the information out there to law enforcement. As we go into the chat part, let's keep the names, initials, everything out, and let's just focus on any questions you have, and hopefully I can help you.
All right, this is going to be a minute.
All right.
All right, get you something to drink. You ready? All right, let's see here. All right, let's see. Okay, I've already answered Marv. A bunch of Hayes. How are you?
Thank you, guys. And while she's looking up that, I want to thank all our mods. Y'all doing a great job, and I thank all y'all that contacted us and continue the good work. And we're looking forward to, and we appreciate everything y'all do for us.
All right, and Laura Doon wants to know if we're safe from the flooding.
I've got to drain the pool tomorrow. Matter of fact, I'm about an inch away from a catastrophe, so I've got to start tomorrow. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it has been a tad bit raining, you know. All right, so let's see here. Where is the first one? Yeah, we had some people from from Australia on earlier. Yep. They had a meeting, so it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. All right, here we go. We've got. I should have written down the time. I'm telling you.
Well, we appreciate everybody being here and all the support y'all give us.
This
by watching the show.
Wild tonight.
And I know there's certain chat settings and stuff, and we don't, we're still learning this platform. And so we'll get there eventually, guys.
All right, let's see here. We got to be coming up on something. Okay, here we go. Molly at True Crime Web. Do you have an opinion, view, or insight about polygraphs? How reliable? What are they most often used for?
A lot of times they're used for just from the threat of we're going to polygraph you. Certain people can, if you're of a certain mentality, can the polygraph be beaten? Absolutely. I've known people that say they've beaten them, and they have no reason to lie to me. But sometimes you'll have people that most certainly, and I've used them, and I've got confessions from them that, will really good examiner. Of course, regardless of whatever the outcome of the polygraph is, if you don't sign certain paperwork, now you can sign your rights away and say that whatever comes out of that polygraph machine and whatever the interpretation of it, I don't have a problem you using it in court. And but more often than not, that's not the case. Most people just say, I'll take a polygraph, and then of course it can't be used in court. But it is a great tool, and the newer stuff that's coming in, they went from the old polygraph machine to which was on a graph, to voice stress analysis, to now they got some of the stuff of where it's brain waves and stuff where they're going to be able to do that. And then, of course, you've got people that some are just great interviewers, and they understand human nature, and they're almost walking, talking polygraph machines, that they can see the body's reactions and how people react during an interview, certain positioning, hesitations, eye movements. There's a lot of things that happen when people lie. And some people are great liars, some people not so much. And but polygraph machines are just a tool. I never really liked them that much. I rather just had good old-fashioned fingerprints and blood would carry you a long way.
All right, and digital. If KK searched for Marathon Station, wonder why Ellie didn't confront him about that when they asked about his other searches.
They may have just, now, they may have in other interviews and just selected this one interview not to, or they just had something that they kept in the background to see where, or they just never got to it. Because, like I said, all interviews are goal-oriented. That law enforcement goes in there with a goal that we want this information. And sometimes even the lies are information that are condemning, and that when you get to court and sets a person that once they say it, they're held to that standard that, this is what happened. This is why this is information I have. Because then they can't take the stand and say, I'm telling the truth. I was lying then, but I'm telling the truth now. Because the jury that'll be part of the instruction of the judge, and carries a great weight with the jury. So coming out of a really good interview with law enforcement is a hard road to carry. If you go in there telling a lie, that may be all that law enforcement's looking for. I didn't care, with the polygraphs. I most certainly always wanted a confession. But, if you don't give me a confession, give me some good lies. I appreciate good lies, especially when lies I can easily prove that you're lying. And use that in court. Works just as good.
All right. And Single Mama 4, I feel like KK is truly evil and doesn't even care.
You and me both.
And CJK, these were young teens, regardless of what's being said, still naive and trusting. It's heartbreaking.
It is. And think about that. He's just one that we know of. There's hundreds of thousands of them right now out there doing the exact same thing. And I think I look at sexual offenders in the U.S., and I think it's right at 750,000 registered sex offenders. And so we have far more than that because there's a lot of people out there that's never been caught. And most certainly we hope that they will.
All right. And Nick, if Kline is arrested, I hope they parade him through the streets of Delphi handcuffed. I'll be there for that.
Well, he's just for that. But and I know where you're talking about arrested for
that.
Facilitating the murder of these 2 young children. And absolutely, it would be great to be able to do that. And and hopefully that won't be far off.
And Teresa, TK and KK both belong in GP in prison.
General population.
Yep.
Absolutely. And that's an interesting thing because they have used to you housed everybody together, but now they try to protect certain and they classify you as violent, nonviolent, or what classification as a prisoner, so that you just can't sometimes put them in general population if you know harm is going to come to them, which some of these people, like I said, I don't really care what happened to them.
And Molly, it definitely seems like the quote web spreads out from KK to bringing down the house of cards.
Yes, and there's more developments every day, and it's very exciting. Even with the recent arrest of just some individuals that were kin to them, and there's a lot of YouTube channels out there right now, what information is going to come out on that? What information does Murder Sheet have? Because I know that they just don't. That they have a lot in the wings waiting to reveal. And I look forward to that.
And Olivia, too. I hope the river search is connected to the case.
I'm going to take Murder Sheet's word for it, for the fact that, like I said, they said that's why Indiana State Police released him, so that he could assist or help with a search. And so I hope that is the case, because if it is, then there is evidence linking the Kline to Delphi.
In Arctic Fox, the more I look at Kegan's dad, the more I feel he's BG.
A lot of people argue it both ways, and
Yeah,
I really don't know at this time who BG is.
Let's see here. Molly, KK is no criminal mastermind. He needs to listen to his lawyer and sit and be quiet.
No, I argue with that on that, Molly. He needs to continue talking to everybody. Yeah, run that. Yeah. I want him to talk every day. I wish I had. I wish he'd talk to me.
Yeah. All right, and Ann, this may involve a large, well-known online criminal activity ring of long standing in Delphi, Peru. Couldn't it have been expected that Ellie would have done some sort of crackdown way before this?
That is an interesting theory, and what was being looked at the time. There's a lot of task force out there that look at a lot of different things. I don't know what all they were looking at that time, and but I know that there's a lot of resources that were able to come in and after the murder of these 2 little girls and properly focus on the case. And like I said, it's a surprise it wasn't solved in the first week.
Yep. And Cindy Smith, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
Yeah,
I've seen it. Reminder.
I've seen it. I've seen anything you said in court be used against you. I've seen some individual absolutely lose it in court, and it's and justifiably. They got exactly what they deserved.
In checking convictions, that is so much freedom for someone like him, in my opinion. Me too. That's crazy. DGR Dave, if KK showed LE where something was in that river, wouldn't they have found it by now?
I'm hoping some of that equipment from what that crash unit was up there with those and with the drones and how did they map and geolocate everything that they recovered, and how valuable and what was it? I saw a tire iron being held up by one of the searchers, I believe, during that. And we have to look at that search. A lot of people say, well, it's just a training exercise. I've had a lot of training. Law enforcement generally is 90% in the classroom, 10% out in the field, somewhere along that, because the longer you're in the field, the more likely law enforcement gets hurt. Been there, seen it. And So you go out, you're taught what the best procedures are, but the amount of time they spent in that river over this 2-week period shows you the importance of what they considered was in that river. And what was it? The closeness to where it was at may indicate of how much it might have weighed. Or they just said that, well, if it's not here, it could be 1,000 yards away. And so we're only going to look here. Or it could be that actually it was something that carried some weight, substantial weight to it, that it wouldn't, even in floodwaters, be washed by a certain distance. But we really don't know what was mapped, what was tagged and bagged, and what the labs have now. But hopefully we'll learn of that in a few weeks.
And double rainbows. Wow, phones in every cell at one time. Talking about the cell phones in the prisons.
With that, and like I said, I came along when you had to put a phone through the bars.
Dark arts. I would let KK keep talking if LE can make even more case against him.
Absolutely. More power to anything he can say that Kegan can say that give him more time. I'm for it.
And SP74 says, Molly, they were searching again today.
I hadn't heard that. I've got to see. They must have took off for the holiday then. I never took off for a holiday.
No, you didn't. So True Crime with Marvin Frank, he can't talk to them right now because he got his chirp taken away. Bless his heart.
Yeah, sad.
Let's see here. Arctic Fox, the amount of evidence against Kegan is insurmountable. Give him crackers and water. That's being generous.
Well, and like I said, rightly so or not, until he's found guilty by our Constitution, we have to give him benefit of the doubt. But, I'm no longer in law enforcement, and I have an opinion that I'm along with you that that's exactly what he deserves. But the courts, at some point, that will be his future of that. He will have and will be heavily restricted.
And Joan, I am afraid that they gave him an immunity deal so he doesn't care about still having porn. I hope that's not the case. I hope that's not so too. Yes. Let's see here. Checking convictions. Prison has a justice system as well. He will find that out.
I've seen it. I've seen it. I absolutely have. Even with the classification, that sometimes certain individuals that you'll run across an inmate that what little morals they have, that they may have a little sister that or a little brother or something that certain individuals, may have preyed upon, that might remind that one individual who's a dangerous individual. And I've seen them act on it and inflict some pretty bad damage on the people that deserved it, just that you couldn't do it to them. But other inmates did it, and then they had to face those charges.
All right, and Raggedy Susan feels exactly the way I do. That picture gives me the creeps.
Oh, yeah.
There's something about those eyes.
Yeah, she's a big eye person. She doesn't like certain, she'll say they're serial killers.
I can pick them out. All right. Does Ellie have to put the phone device in KK's hand to prove CSAM charges, or is it enough proof that it is registered in his name?
Well, they addressed that in there that, and when you're looking at, it's what you can, it's not so much what law enforcement believes. It's what a good prosecuting attorney can convince a jury of. And so when you go in there and law enforcement can charge you with any charge that they want, and then take it to a grand jury and get you indicted. And then, but it's up to that prosecutor of what he can convince a jury of how guilty an individual is of committing a certain crime, so that he can say, how likely, how odd is it that this one individual owned multiple devices over multiple years with the same type of searches? And there's one common denominator every time with that device, and it's Kegan Kline. And so that's how, people, our juries, sometimes they will do absolutely strange things, but more often than not, they'll do the right thing, and it's logical, and they'll reach the right. Although a lot of times I wish they'd come up with a more harsher selection of which charge they want. That when the judge charges a jury with certain types of crimes, and there's multiple levels that they can be convicted of, often a jury may go with a lesser included offense, but more often than not, they do come to the right conclusion.
This one is priceless. And Arctic Fox, he looks like he's trying out for my 600-pound inmate life.
Arctic Fox.
Priceless.
Oh yeah,
I had to share that.
Yeah, Arctic Fox. We have some great conversations.
Yes. Let's see here. Olivia too. He is evil and has no soul. You are so right.
And you're absolutely correct. And,
disgusting.
And I've, and like I said, there's thousands of them just out there just like him.
All right, and LA Connection nailed it. You said inherited. KK learned his sexual predator ways from his dad.
And that is a common, that it is family generational, something that you learn generation to generation, and most certainly that they'll look at him and look at that family, and hopefully justice will come to a lot of them, whoever most certainly created this monster, because we're all born little boys and girls, but sometimes, and most certainly, these type of predators are created by their environment, by other monsters, and that's sad, but that's part of our world, and we have to address every one of those monsters.
And Teresa, you'd be shocked how many people are ignorant and think these subhumans can change. It sickens me.
You're absolutely correct. There is no cure for these child predators. Not that I know of. Well, there is one, but it takes a lot of dirt.
And Margaret Lee Reed, society nipped this predator in the bud for good.
Well, whenever he goes to court, I think it's at the first of next year, we'll see. And hopefully they give him everything he deserves. But then again, we also have this other predator out there that's still on the streets of a bridge guy. We got to get him there too.
All right. And DGR Dave, to me, it's not so much TK and KK's weight, it's their height.
And that's one of the things. Some of these cameras can make people seem shorter or taller and all this other stuff. And hopefully the experts will have that corrected and understand it. There's been so much argument about that this is his height and his weight. And then it's on the flyers for so long. And then all of a sudden FBI pulls the height and weight. And very confusing.
All right. Excuse me. And at John Moore, from a professional law enforcement officer's perspective, do you think the folks that are reaching out to KK for whatever reason are hurting the venue should he ever be charged for the double murder?
No, I mean, this stuff isn't going to be allowed in the court. The public's opinion, isn't going to be allowed there. Now, what Kegan talks back most certainly can get into court, but they're not going to, they'll have hearings and of that, so they're just not going to let the general public come in there and say certain things that might influence the jury or taint the evidence in any shape, form, or fashion. So, no, I mean, even, the social platforms out there, it may make it harder for a jury to be selected but they'll go out there and go through all the protocols and follow the procedures and find as a jury of his peers that's non-biased as they can. And so it won't have an impact on it. I don't worry about that much.
And at Sandra, does Deer Creek flow into the Wabash River? And yes, it does. I looked it up myself.
I don't know. It has to be somewhere down below Delphi.
It's something. It's called something else. Did your Dave? If there's a leak coming from LE, that's a problem.
And there is that's one of the things I was going to, and I don't know if I spoke about it enough, that either Kegan's involved or it's someone within the jail, or is it something that Murder Sheet's just making up that there is someone out there. Now there was the communications things of that Murder Sheets addressed that when they said that Kegan addressed their issue and said Marlboro menthols, like it's a code word. Now, does their source use a code word to communicate so that they know it's coming from him? Were they using some of that World War II spy stuff that we're going to have code words so it's me? Or the Cold War, maybe not World War II, but Cold War information. Possible. And very interesting if that if that was the case, why would Murder Sheets bring that into it? Or, but it was extremely interesting of hashtag Marlboro menthols. And how could Kegan know that? Who fed him back that information? Which law enforcement would know because they have all the communications.
All right. And Joan, Steve, why do you think they didn't charge KK or Tony at the time of the raid? We see a lot more people raided for much less. That smells dirty, like a powerful entity.
Early on, even the FBI, for whatever reason, and not for whatever reason, they were focused on the Ron Logan search warrant. And, when they said it, they obtained that affidavit and contained within the affidavit that he was involved in the murder of these two children. That evidently in investigations, not everybody, if you got 20 investigators working on a case and you ask 20 investigators who did this, not everyone, well, there's certain circumstances that they might all focus on one, but normally you're going to have a differing of opinion of it's going to be this a motive, and if it's this motive, it's this individual. And you may have a subset that says, no, it's this individual and this was the motive. And most certainly FBI was looking at it from whatever perspective that Ron Logan matched everything, and they went with him, and were never able to prove that that was the case. And most recently, even another FBI agent recently retired still was with that line of thought. And knowing and looking at the Kegan Kline and all the mountain of evidence, I don't see how they can ever get away from where law enforcement is in that corner now saying that whoever committed this, because Carter says, you never thought that we would go in this new direction. And they've been on that new direction now since last 3 years plus, and which shocked the community because everybody was told social media is not involved, and now they've never backed away from it.
All right, and Molly, at Steve, what do you think about the arrest of TT?
Oh, that is interesting. He is a cousin, and he has a connection to North Country Road, and it is an interesting charge that's a year old, and we'll see where it goes. If Murder Sheet brings out something next week on him, wouldn't surprise me a bit. But that is interesting.
And Raggedy Susan, I like the little emoji we get when we become a member. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That means a lot to she.
I worked hard on those.
She worked hard on them. It drove her crazy.
It did like to drive me crazy. All right, let's see here. All right, Red's kid, KK gets time served in county. It will be hell when he moves into federal prison. I think this is nothing. He is killing more time served in county, which is far less harsh.
It is, and they do look at it and give him a certain amount of time served. Federal time is a different time, which I don't think he has any federal charges currently. Doesn't mean he won't, because feds can come after you in any shape, form, or fashion at any time.
All right, and James Lawman, why doesn't someone just call ISP and ask if it's a crime scene or a training of new recruits?
I think they have. I honestly do think they have. I know at least Murder Sheets has.
What do they say?
Hmm?
That it's a training thing?
Well, I mean, they just say that it is, but they're journalists and lawyers.
No.
I'm speculating on that they have, but I wouldn't expect them to say that without knowledge that it is. And so they had to ask somebody. And whoever that source is that told them says it's not a training exercise. That's what I was basing that on.
Red's kid, Murder Sheet is the same podcast that was confident Ryan Logan was the killer. Oops.
I don't know. I don't know.
Oops.
I know they released a search warrant that said that Ron Logan was.
All right. Scott Brown, no matter what, KK has absolutely nothing good in his future.
You're absolutely correct, Mr. Brown.
Let's see here.
There's nothing that man can do. I mean, he just in the charges standalone of his child, of what he's done to all his children, he'll never be able to repay.
All right. And Jim Cook, I've been reviewing older videos which rightly suggest that the killer had to know the lay of the land. Even LE had suggested it.
I believe so. It most certainly appears to be that way.
Mm-hmm. And Arctic Fox, I can't believe in a town that small, nobody has stepped forward in all these years.
And that's one of the concerning things about it, that what town, it's not within that small town, that if this is the way that it's going to end, that it is from another community up the road. Is that what it is? Don't know yet, but like I said, I hope to find out in a couple of weeks.
All right. And James Lawman, it's been said that KK will be released in 18 months.
Well, I mean, it depends, whatever the negotiated deal, how much time served and what all the other stuff is. Has that happened in the past to some of these sexual predators? Most certainly. But it depends on what they. Thank you, Cindy. It means a lot to us with all y'all support. Like I said, it just absolutely humbles us that everybody out there helps us in so many different ways.
All right. And now my Google machine just caught up. So if I miss y'all, I apologize. There's so much in chat, it keeps doing its thing. Let's see here. Unsolved crimes uncovered. There's much more to all of this with them. We cannot assume what KK is saying is true. Time will tell once the search is completed.
And that's the thing, will criminals lie to get a lighter sentence? Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about a psychopath here, this animal of Kegan Kline, that all he's ever done is deceive people. He has a narrative that across the board that, that he has endorsed harming children in so many ways as he went across these catfishing adventures and went out there and harmed these kids and submitted them to unknown threats that they never expected that would come. And then also that how much of a part did he play in the murder of these two children? He absolutely deserves everything he gets.
Hey, y'all, I'm going to make Steve read this one. What does that say?
It said, Mrs. Steve, thank you for all your hard work supporting the channel. Much appreciated by your subscribers. And she does. She works.
Thank you so much.
Well,
you
and-
made my day, and it's been a rough one. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. She's been working all day on the Cyclops, and I think she got another state in today, didn't you, or something?
I did get another state in, but I've got a sick, hurt dog, so I've been babying that, and it's just been one of those crazy days. Let's see here. Margaret Lee, do you believe the second sketch looks anything like KK's cousin from Country Club Road?
I don't know how many cousins he has on Country Club Road, but one of them, no. But you know, like I said, I don't know if it's the one that was just recently arrested. It depends on what sketch you look at. You know, there's several, you know, there's at least three. I think there's 2 sketches that's on the flyers. And then there was another sketch of somebody did of him wearing a hoodie. It just depends on which one you look at, and they're so generic.
All right. Okay, Marv sent you the link.
Okay.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Marv sent you another link. Oh my goodness. Okay. Why? What's more difficult to use? Polygraph machine or Google machine? When the chat's like this, is by far the Google machine.
Yeah.
By far.
I
That's
watched
one,
those. I watched, you know,
See, you just did it again.
these polygraphers. These polygraphers, they go to all these schools and stuff, and some of the equipment that they use, you know, it's and polygraph machines have been around a lot longer than these computers. But there's new machines coming out there all the time that are higher quality, and I'm sure they have a better truth rate than some of the old stuff. Maybe not, because there's a lot of those polygraphers that really swore by their machines.
Oh, and thanks, Molly. You stuck Steve's email out there. I did see that, but now I can't remember who asked for the email. So thank you for putting that out there for me.
And I appreciate all the emails that come in all the time.
Yes.
You know, I get a lot of emails.
And thank you to my mods tonight. There is no way I could have done this without you.
Thank you. And our volunteers on the Cyclops part.
Absolutely.
Everything y'all have done is made and has allowed us to get thousands of missing children and thousands of murdered children's stories out there, so that people that want to look into some of these cases can have an impact. And we just can't thank y'all enough for that.
Mm-hmm. All right. And Jim Cook, listening to Frank talk last night made a lot of sense that someone would need to know those woods. And then listening to videos with YouTubers and law enforcement made me wonder that, and I didn't know.
I'm looking forward to eventually, hopefully, getting up there and walking those woods. And I got to get in touch with some landowners and make sure I don't get put in jail. But
please, not in Indiana. Let's see here. Checking convictions. Do you think this has helped in the way Ellie will handle these type of predators?
Law enforcement, you know, we don't get to choose what laws we enforce. If you know, the laws are written, and you know, you're not supposed to have selective enforcement. Unfortunately, sometimes law enforcement does, you know, for whatever reason. There's some strange things that go on out there. But the laws are there, and they should be enforced equally. That once you identify an individual as being most certainly a bad guy, you use every aspect of the laws that's within those books to make sure that they're handled and they receive their maximum sentences.
And it's Scott Brown. If Kegan goes to prison, no matter where they put him, they will get to him when you got crimes like that things just seem to happen. Look at Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
no doubt.
there's no difference from what Jeffrey Epstein did with these young children and absolutely destroyed their lives, and what Kegan's done. He's destroyed these children's lives.
Molly at Steve, any thoughts on friend number one being released close in time and on ankle bracelet to the river search?
That was an interesting development, but it's in, you know, I think it's in another state and everything, but who knows? Coincidences there's not a lot of coincidences in murder investigations, but, you know, stranger things have happened. But like I said, it is interesting that those two things did occur at the same time that Kegan is transferred custody to another agency within the same state for whatever reason. That was a strange court proceeding.
And Teresita Hillis, do you rank all RSOs the same, or should there be different levels? Hope this makes sense.
It does. Registered sex offenders, there's different, and as I was doing the research, that within the sex offenders classifications, there's many different types of sexual offenders out there, and that's for some people that, you know, all of them to me are the same. You know, even if you fantasize about having a relationship with a child, that is only the first step. That eventually, at some point, you could do that and progress. That you may just fantasize about it, but that, you know, that's the first step to committing that act. And so if you're out there gathering up all that porn and you're watching it and everything, and at what point and should we wait until they move to that next level? No. And put them in and max them out the best you can at the first chance you get.
All right. And why? Child sex offenders need to leave prison only one way, in a pine box. I agree.
Can't argue with you.
Nope. Double rainbows. It blows me away how predators get released from prison. Hard to process that they have rights they don't deserve.
I think every person that's released and has to go before a judge, that the judge's final decision should be is that you can come to my house and babysit my children. And when you have a judge that says that and does that, then yeah, I might see releasing one of them. But if a judge says no, then of course we shouldn't release them. But they should be a reasonable expectation that the court systems protects our society, and often that's not the case, and that's sad.
All right. And Mr. Steve, do you have any thoughts about the confusing 2 sketches Ellie released to the public? Thanks.
Confusing, yes. I have a little bit better feeling now. Carter's made a few clarifications, but that there's only certain parts of that sketch, either one of the sketches. When he was saying that you take the 2 sketches, combine them, throw them away, and you have the bridge guy, made no sense to me. Still a little bit confusing, but I feel a lot better about it. That now as you look at it, of course, they say bridge guy is just one individual, which that's true, but they are opening the door that there may have been other participants in this, that in different ways. So like I said, I'm looking forward to realizing what it is in the coming days.
All right. And Sweet Caroline at Mr. Steve, isn't there an app where you can check to see how close RSOs are near your home? I checked it once before, but forgot what it was called.
Yeah, there is an app, but also you can go on there, and almost every county will have it somewhere in their county registry, or that whatever state you're in whatever county, you type in registered sex offenders. Some of them are apps and you have to apply for it, but a lot of them have state databases that have that don't cost anything. You can just go in there and they'll map it out for you.
All right. And Paper Chaser, isn't it more difficult to sort out who the actual killer is when the suspects are in the same family? We had a case in where twin brothers killed one of the brothers' wives. Oh, that's creepy.
It is. And I've heard where a DNA has been used when you had twin brothers, because those are extremely difficult. And you have to go with whichever one didn't have the alibi. And I think there's been some cases that went to court like that. Whereas, because they share the same DNA. And so who do you charge? And so you charge the one that doesn't have the alibi. But I don't know which case you're talking about. But yeah, it is extremely within a family sometimes if you don't have all the markers in the DNA of certain individuals, or you don't even have DNA, but it's within a certain household. Been there.
That's a very interesting case over them twins. I might have to use that. Jim Cook, scratching the surface and verifying everything uncovers the simplest lies. The simple ones lead to the big ones.
And there is, in all good lies, there's some truth. And that's what some of these great liars rely upon, that they'll give you a little bit of the truth just to lead you on so that you'll go down that path and believe them. And eventually you'll, like I said, it gets bigger and bigger lies sometimes.
All right. And Kimmy Canuck, it's hard for KK to keep the amount of lies he spends in line. I hope he keeps talking and that the killers are charged soon. Hopefully the recent arrest Ellie made lead to cornering KK.
It most certainly appears to be going in that direction. I mean, like I said, with the news release of all this different levels of evidence against his involvement, it appears to be going that way.
All right. What time are you supposed to be off? It's 9.
Yeah, we're getting close.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. See, Molly says it too. Dead eyes. KK, TK, TT, no soul, no empathy, no nothing. Scary. I told you those eyes say something. All right. Let's see here. That dog. At Ann, even if KK gets some sort of immunity or deal for cooperating on the murder cases, assuming he wasn't the actual murderer, he's still facing all the other porn charges. He's in jail for a long time.
I hope you are absolutely correct. I'm on your side.
Yeah. And Teresa at Steve, here in Wisconsin, an inmate killed a sex offender. I said buy him a huge steak dinner and a case of beer. But how do they manage to get hold of them since they in PC?
I don't know, when how that works out sometimes. They're supposed to be housed in certain sectors and things. But when people, like I said, sometimes I think it was even Dahmer, he was killed by other inmates within their prison. And so it's just something that happens. Jail and prisons are violent places. I mean, they're full of violent people. And sometimes you see justice done. And regardless, even as a law enforcement officer, if you see something happening in there, and Lord knows I've seen enough, I've seen a lot of jail fights and riots and things that go on. And but you still have a job to do. Because you have to, even within the jail, there's still order that you have to maintain, and it's a very confusing place.
And CJK, his father was abusive, still is. Makes you wonder what his childhood was like. Some are just born evil.
They can be. There's, not only just born evil, but like I said, monsters are made.
All right, and SB 74, so many interesting events, coincidences surrounding KK. Friend number 1 released a house arrest. Country Club Road cousin arrested on old DUI warrant. The custody switch. The river search.
Absolutely. And when you throw on the catfishing from within that family, and you throw on the marathon gas station search, day of the murders, and you throw on the contacting them that morning. Absolutely. I agree with you.
And Molly at Steve, unfortunately, Marlboro menthols has a really gross meaning related to CSAM.
Yeah,
So
and
we don't know about that.
and the, you know, is that some, is that what he was relating to, or was the code word? Don't know.
All right, USA Libertarian. I can't remember. Do we have the very first interview with KK? Maybe they only had him talking to the girls, which in itself wouldn't be illegal.
I think that in the transcripts that we got, that he most certainly was interviewed by a female in an earlier interview that they referred to. So how many interviews was he potentially? He had 30 charges, so they may have, there's a potential he had at least 30 interviews. One interview per charge is possible. Did that occur? I don't know. It may have been even more. Because these children are scattered across the state or United States, and you would have different agencies that might be involved in some of the Anthony Shots Dropbox accounts and these other platforms that may have originated out from him. So it's going to be a very complex case.
All right, USA Libertarian. Steve, what might LE mean by, quote, switching gears to a new investigative strategy, end quote? What is typically meant by strategy?
And that is a highly contested area within a department because you'll have officers you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out what's the best way to solve this case and what is the motive and how should we proceed and what evidence do we have? Because you can have certain evidence that leads you in a certain way, and law enforcement gets to decide how much evidence they release and what evidence to release. And as they release that, that is a strategy of when and how, and where do we focus on, and when do we rebuild interest in the case on those anniversaries. All of that is strategy that is done by law enforcement. And a lot of times behavioral science units play a part in that, okay, this is a good time. Or you look for certain things that are happening in an offender's life that are stress factors so that you can apply more pressure. I most certainly loved interviewing people that was under stress from a lot of different angles, for the fact that, the more stress you can put on, easier are they to break. And sometimes it's just natural stresses of what is going on in their lives that they have no control over, or you don't have any control over, but you most certainly can manipulate and exploit those weaknesses.
And USA Libertarian, in the late interrogation, he refers to telling the lady in the first interview he really had to change his life. That really doesn't sound like they knew about really bad CSAM, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. And is it just a ploy by a habitual liar? Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, you caught me. I'm going to change my life. And seen it hundreds of times. Yeah. You caught me on my first burglary. You caught me on my first theft. No, that's not the case.
And checking convictions. Thank you to all who help our world a better place.
Absolutely.
I agree. All right. And Michael Anderson, speaking of dogs, is it true there was a dog DNA or fur at scene? If so, I wonder if they can link it to Kline's cousin's dog. That cousin's home is where the phone pinged. Did he have a dog?
I don't know, but most certainly there's been a lot of speculation about what kind of DNA, and there was some type of paperwork served to obtain the Kline's dogs, and then even in the affidavit for the Ron Logan search warrant, it was mentioned about hair, animal hair and stuff. So I understand your interest in that. I'm interested in it too. Hopefully there'll be did they ever execute a affidavit or search warrant at that North Country road address? Hopefully Murder Sheet has it and is going to release it. I'd be interested in reading it.
Yeah, no kidding. Yep. Let's see here. And at Kimmy, Ellie, both in the U.S. and Canada need better funding for investigators to be able to hunt these child predators.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I love watching these shows where they go out and catch these child predators and stuff. And law enforcement, they go in there and they create these task force and they create these false accounts and lure these predators in. And that's very satisfying.
And Teresa says you can sign up for email alerts on Family Watchdog. You'll be shocked how many sickos live in your areas, and they alert you when RSO moves near you.
Thank you for providing that tip. For
Yeah,
everybody.
absolutely. All right, it is 9:30.
All right. We're going to be heading out, and we thank all of you that have come
And
in.
there's a bunch left, and
Send me an email, send me a comments.
if I didn't say something, it's my fault. I'm worried about my dog. I hear her upstairs. So, and besides that, you've got another thing you got to do after this.
Yeah, I got.
So
good,
I apologize.
But we appreciate everybody being with us tonight, and I hope that this case is solved soon. And if you have any information on the case, report to law enforcement and get it there so that we can get justice for these two young children and bring justice for their family to see what is that we all do care and understand, and hopefully we can get as many of these predators off the road as possible. But thank you once again, and see y'all in a few days.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you for all your support.